Tung backs recall, defends Quake aid claims. Thomas Wu urges unity, respect for recall outcome. Bride upset over wedding crasher friend's rude behavior. EU-China summit to kick off amid fraught relations. Japan's Ishiba denies resignation plans despite election loss. Australia lifts ban on US beef imports. French President Macron files defamation suit against US influencer. Couple marries in flooded Philippine church.
Hello, I'm Johnny. Thank you for joining us on Funny News. It's Friday, July 25th, World Drowning Prevention Day, and here are your top stories. And for today's Taiwan news, Pegatron Chairman Tung backed the recall of KMT lawmaker Fu Kun-chi, accusing him of blocking Quake aid. Fu and his wife sued Tung, who stood by his claims. Tung revealed nearly $100 million in donations made after the 2018 and 2024 quakes. Taixing Chairman Thomas Wu said recall elections are a part of democracy and the results should be respected. He urged the public to return to normal life after the vote, focus on stabilizing Taiwan's economy, and face global challenges with unity. A bride in Taiwan said her longtime friend brought 4 uninvited co-workers to her wedding. The 5 gave only $600 as a gift, but took home cakes and drinks worth $20,000. They also shouted at the staff and caused a scene during the event. And in global news, a summit between China and the European Union kicked off in Beijing on Thursday, with leaders set to discuss trade tensions and the war in Ukraine. Expectations have been tempered by uncertainty over global trade, politics, and the attendance of Chinese President Xi Jinping, who reportedly declined a visit to Brussels, where the summit was originally planned. China confirmed this week that Xi would meet European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and European Council President Antonio Costa.
Optimism surrounded EU-China relations at the start of the year, with hopes that a Donald Trump presidency in the US would bring the two economic powerhouses closer. But months later, EU-China ties are more fraught than before. Ahead of the summit, EU officials said they were ready for frank conversations, while Chinese officials framed it as a chance for greater collaboration. There had been hope of finding common ground, and the European Commission president said earlier this month that the EU's relationship with Beijing is one of the most defining and consequential for the rest of this century, emphasizing the need to make progress on deadlocked issues.
On Wednesday, Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba again denied plans to resign following a historic defeat of his ruling party in a weekend election, despite growing calls for him to step down. He said he wanted to ensure the proper implementation of a new tariff agreement with the United States. Ishiba met with heavyweights from his ruling Liberal Democratic Party and former prime ministers on Wednesday at party headquarters. He said they did not discuss his resignation or a new party leadership contest.
They only discussed the election results, voters' dissatisfaction, and the urgent need to avoid party discord. Despite his business-as-usual demeanor, Ishiba is under increasing pressure to bow out after his ruling party and its junior coalition partner, Komeito, lost their majority in the 248-member upper house on Sunday, the smaller and less powerful of Japan's two-chamber parliament, shaking his grip on power. This came after a loss in the more powerful lower house in October, and now his coalition lacks a majority in both houses of parliament, making it even more difficult for his government to pass policies and worsening Japan's political instability.
Australia will lift restrictions on the import of beef from the U.S., a trade barrier that had angered the Trump administration. American beef has effectively been banned from the country, which has some of the strictest biosecurity laws in the world since 2003, after an outbreak of mad cow disease. The White House cited the restrictions when explaining tariffs imposed on Australia in April as part of U.S. President Donald Trump's so-called Liberation Day scheme.
The Australian government has denied that the timing of the decision was related to the trade tiff, saying a decade-long departmental review found the U.S. had improved beef safety measures. They technically lifted the ban on U.S. beef in 2019, but cattle from Mexico and Canada remained on the blacklist, and the integration of their supply chains essentially barred beef from the U.S. as well. However, the U.S. has recently introduced better cattle tracing protocols, allowing authorities to track where the animals were raised and respond more effectively in the event of a disease outbreak. Australia's Agriculture Minister, Julie Collins, said the department had undertaken a rigorous science and risk-based assessment and was now satisfied that the U.S. is managing any biosecurity threats.
French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte filed a defamation lawsuit in the U.S. on Wednesday against right-wing influencer Candace Owens, centered on her claim that France's First Lady is male. The Macrons said in a lawsuit filed in Delaware Superior Court that Owens has waged a live-field campaign of global humiliation and engaged in relentless bullying to promote her podcast and expand her frenzied fan base.
The Macrons said the lies included that Brigitte Macron was born under the name Jean-Michel Trognu, the actual name of her older brother. The 22-count complaint seeks an unspecified amount of compensatory and punitive damages. Wednesday's lawsuit is a rare case of a world leader suing for defamation. U.S. President Donald Trump has filed multiple defamation lawsuits, including one against the publisher of the Wall Street Journal last week. To prevail in U.S. defamation cases, public figures like the Macrons and Trump must show that defendants acted with actual malice, meaning they knew the information was false or had reckless disregard for its truth.
Jamaica Aguilar walked down the aisle clutching her father's arm, dressed in a white gown and a cathedral-length veil worthy of the Baroque-style church she was in, except that she, along with all her guests, was almost knee-deep in water, as the church was completely flooded due to heavy rains brought by both a seasonal monsoon and a typhoon. But the couple didn't let this stop them, saying it was challenging, but we focus on what's important.
VO6, the scenes from Barisoan Church, north of the Philippine capital Manila, soon went viral on social media and circulated as another example of Filipino resilience in the face of calamity. Amazingly, this wasn't the first time something like this had happened. 2 years ago, another Filipino couple walked down the flooded aisle of the same church at the same time of year. These submerged weddings aren't just a tale of determination. They are the latest example of a persistent flooding problem that continues to bring misery to millions, a problem worsened by decaying sewage systems, poor urban planning, and increasingly intense and frequent extreme weather events.
The answer for yesterday was B, intrusion. The journalist was criticized for his unwelcome intrusion into the celebrity's private life. Did you answer correctly? Now let's delve into today's news. EU-China summit to kick off amid fraught relations. Number 1, temper. 缓和调解. The speech was meant to temper public anger. Number 2, attendance. 出席出勤人数. Class attendance is mandatory for all students. Number 3, deadlock. 僵局. The negotiations ended in a deadlock. Next, we have a multiple choice question for everyone to practice. Which answer would you choose? You can write your answer in the comments section. The correct answer will be announced next week. According to statistics from the WHO, each year almost 1/4 million people lose their lives in a drowning accident, with a large portion of these being children ages 1 to 14. The inaugural observance of World Drowning Prevention Day took place in 2021 when it was founded through the combined efforts of the World Health Organization and the United Nations. And that's all for today's FUNDAY News. Be sure to tune in to FUNDAY News from Monday to Friday and click the link below to join FUNDAY for free. I'm Johnny Wu, your host, and I will see you next time.